Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Star Citizen Live Gamedev FPS level design. I used to have it on the. I do have it on the. It is right there in the corner. I should have just read it. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee. If you've never seen Star Citizen Live before, it's where we take about an hour at the end of our week and we hang out with some of our developers and we talk shop. Sometimes we do roundtable Q&As where we take questions from you, the backers, and put them to our developers. Other times we do our game dev episodes, which is what we're doing this week, where we basically explore somebody's process. We see how they work. We see what it is they actually do, and you can still ask questions during the process. They're also usually accompanied by a couple of their coworkers who just just poke them throughout the hour while they're working and make their life a living hell for an hour, and that's what we're going to do this week. So let me introduce you to our guests this week. We got members of our various level design teams. We got folks from the landing zone content team. We got folks from the modular content team. So let's go around the room and see who we have today. We will start with our demonstrator. Right here to my left here. Antoine, tell us who you are and what you do for Star Citizen.
Hello. Yeah, my name is Antoine. I've been working for Star Citizen for almost 2 years now. I started on New Babbage, so on Landing Zone, and then I worked on Grimmix as well, and currently I'm working on the homesteads. Yep.
Great. I'm really enjoying showing the homestead progress on ISC, by the way.
Yeah, nice.
It's become an ISC tradition for the last 2 quarters. Let's just continue counterclockwise. Andreas, who are you and what do you do for Star Citizen?
Well, my name is Andreas. I am the lead level designer for Star Citizen Persistent Universe. So, been here a few times, been with the company for 6 years plus. So, mostly I lead the work of the team. I do get my hands on some white boxing from time to time, like Area 18, which I worked on together with my esteemed colleague here, Manuel. He was a very fresh, aspiring level designer back in those days. He has come very far.
What do you have to say about that, Manuel?
Good old times, actually, yeah.
Oh, don't blush.
Yeah.
So who are you? What do you do besides Area 18?
Hey, I'm Manuel. I'm with the company for almost 3 years now. Besides Area 18, I did a bit of rest stops. I did the prison hub, and I'm currently working on Horizon.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we showed you. You were on ISC most recently when we explored the commercial platform for the Horizon landing zone.
Indeed.
All right, so today's show is about exploring what level design is, how level design works, the ideas and the considerations that go into level design. I think there's a lot of, it's one of those nebulous kind of professions where people equate level design with the people who make all the art and the people who create the finished product of an area, of an underground facility or a space station or whatnot. But most of what you do is in white box, and it's the early stuff. Like level design is about laying this foundation that everybody else then builds upon. So we're going to explore that process. Antoine, I understand that you're our demonstrator today. So if you want to go ahead and start your screen share, we'll just jump right into it here.
All right. Can you guys see?
Yeah. Now,
all right, awesome.
Now, floating in space, this looks like a weird space station. But what is it we're looking at, actually?
So, okay. So, yeah, I'll take it from the start. Basically, what we're doing is the initial process of creating a location. So, first of all, we get a pitch, and we have to create like a level design document that goes around it, where we do a bit of research and we detail what the location will be about. And from our side, we also have to do some details like this one, research like this one, where we try to just find interesting pictures on how to create the layout. It's a bit like what artists do with the image references, but for us, we're looking at like the navigation and what cool thing can happen here and then, and so on. So what I'm going to show today is I want to take an underground facility, and I would like to connect it to one of the cave that we have, the new cave that we have, like that one big opening cave that we have, and then trying to make a connection between those two. Like you could go down into the underground facility, and then you have a section that opens up into a cave, and so on, right? So from the modular aspect of it, it's just one section of it that I'll be creating. I won't actually connect it to a cave, but it's just to show you guys like the process of like, hey, here we go. We start off with some of the pictures to explore what like some of the ideas we could bring into this location. And I was thinking like, here's like this open space here, and we have like maybe some areas that you can go from the underground facility to this thing. So that's why like quite like this thing here where you can see some part of the cave, but you still have like the underground stuff that can open up to mix to this and this image. So this is what I've been looking on the side. Then usually we would detail all that stuff into a level design document. We'll get also the mission guide that would tell us like what we would precisely be doing in there. But I'll let the other guys explain a bit more about this when I start. But yeah, so in here, what I'm showing you guys here is an underground facility. So I took this because it's a well-known place that everybody knows about, and so it's quite easy to expand from. What I'll be doing is I'll just show you guys how this place works in general. We have like a hub. This is like the modular aspect of a location. In landing zones, we create like very bespoke layout. But in the modular aspect, we have to think about a hub section that has multiple like connectors that are very similar, on which we create these modules that can snap to it, and then we can use the procedural tool to generate different type of areas and so on. So what I'm gonna do is to just like take out one of these, and then I will have a few sets of white box elements on my side here. And then I will start to construct something. So as you know, in the universe, we have like a bunch of sets that have metrics, which is very important for us, that everything just goes with the right metrics. And if I put a little light over here, no, it doesn't work. And all these are like preset things that we can use to create our location, where we will know that this will be the right metrics, the right will be the right space for us to use, basically. So I can start, and you guys can speak on top.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, just as a small note, we do have a few more pieces to build our locations than
yes.
like 5 that Antoine just showed there. So I think we have 7. No, we have quite a few. Going back to like what Jared said in the beginning, I think one of the reasons why people sometimes are a bit maybe not so aware of what level designers actually do is that, to my knowledge, depending on which company you actually work in, a level designer does slightly different things. In certain companies, they're more like scripters. In other companies, they are more blockout people, right? So in generally here at Cloud Imperium Games, you would say a level designer is a person who is part of the process from the beginning to the very end, right? He is part of the story when, like Antoine said, we get the kickoff and the narrative. We put together the level design document that is a fairly extensive document that contains all the information that is required for a location to be considered fully functional. These documents are usually written by the level designer, and then I review them and sign them off. And after that's been signed off, we go into a white box phase, which is what we're seeing here. Part of the level design document is also doing what Antoine did, which is gathering reference images and just getting an idea of what we want to aim for, right? But then we move into the white box phase, and that is the creative bit, right? There is in general 2 parts to level design. It's the creative bit, which is blocking out the location, building it, and then there's the slightly more boring, stronger, tedious bit, which is the markup, and that is setting up all the volumes, everything that defines atmosphere in a space and determines if it has a gravity or whatever it might be, right? I'm sure everyone at some point went through a doorway in Star Citizen and suddenly you start suffocating for some reason, and that's just some level designer missed our room system and he gets a big slap. So, but
yeah, the same goes also to systems like the elevators, the trains, restricted areas, ATC, landing services. Like there's lots of things and that come afterwards. So
I mean, there's a lot of markup that we do in locations. I mean, taken two of them is the room system and the transit system, and there's quite a few components to them, if you put it that way. So many times the setup can be done completely correct from our side, and it might break for some other reason. It could be, object container streaming or whatever it might be that causes it, or it might be that there's some conflict with the layers, or there's a million things that can go wrong. So
And,
I think a lot of people who are outside of kind of level design don't quite realize the complexity of certain things.
no, you
so-
already said it was your fault. You can't take it back.
Yeah, but that's because we are noble and humble.
So what I'm doing now is basically I have like the start of a corridor that then expand to this cave system that I want. So to just represent like these big cave openings, I just took like one of these a cave brush that I just found, and I kind of want to have this squeezing effect here to just have that big reveal of like this cave after it. So I was just trying to get like the distance, from here. Does it look like natural? Does it feel that realistic in some sort of way, right? Like would that be something? Is it too close? Like this door over here, is it too close, and so on? Like these are things that we have to take into account as well, and try to build out a location and just try to make things that make sense and not crazy things.
Yeah, I mean what Antoine is doing there, right? It's in the game. Most of the connectors we have that connects two rooms together is this kind of letterbox connector. It's a 12 by 4 meter connector. Like you see, that's the bigger opening there, and the smaller kind of doorway has a 4 by 4 meter one, right? There's a lot of things to level design, especially when it comes to like spatial awareness and shapes and forms, right? Like if you would build everything on a fairly large scale, you wouldn't necessarily create an impressive level. You would just make the player feel small, So you need this balance between smaller spaces and larger spaces, right? If everything is big, then it does feel big, you just feel small, right? And the same thing here, right? We have these larger openings that sometimes goes down into more narrow passageway, and then it brings the player forward a little bit, and then we have another opening in the reveal where you get this like thing,
Yeah, that's the difference between like having a bespoke location where you actually like just have like one thing sitting in a connector, and you have like more control over like how the layout and everything in the structure will be, while in modular and procedural system, you have to keep in mind that like what kind of rooms and how they connect to your spaces. So they have like all these like 12-meter connectors, and then it could just be an alcove that's like placed next to it, or you want to have like just a transition piece that leads into like a bigger room. And sometimes you need to bring the players a bit further out to provide more space for the next rooms, cause like otherwise they might bump into the walls of the hub, for example. This is a case we had a lot in the rest stops actually, where we had to like bring the people further out, and then so the room has enough space to expand and not has any overlapping or collision issues.
Now, I want to add here real quick that we're working in white box here. The purpose of what you're doing is not to make something that looks good. It's to build an experience to lay the foundation, the groundwork for something that then environment artists would come in and they would see these 45-degree cantered rock walls, and then they would sculpt something that was more natural looking and stuff. This is to you're trying to build the first impression of an experience to convey to other artists.
Yeah, I mean,
who are going to come in.
With this, so basically, if you're looking at building a location, it has multiple steps. It has kind of the initial prototype. If you need to do a prototype, maybe you're doing something new. Maybe the first time you're doing a cave, you just start with prototype. You want to prototype the spaces. You want to prototype the sizes of the passageway, any kind of gameplay element that goes in there, like jumping puzzles. And once we have all the prototypes that we feel that we require, then we go over into the white box phase, which is usually driven by level design. And even the white box phase itself has kind of two stages. It has a very rough and dirty initial section where you just really try things out. You just throw things together. Things are overlapping and it looks a bit shite. That's just the way it is. But you just want to get the feeling of what you want to achieve there. And then when you have what you kind of want to achieve at that place, you go in and kind of clean it up into a clean white box, which is like a proper white box where things kind of match up, where right now he's using something we call the template tile sets, which is a tile set, has loads of pieces. It has a pink material and a gray material. And if you see something that is pink, that usually means that there should be another mesh that goes there to cover it. So when you're actually in the room and it's a finished white box, you will only see gray. You won't see anything pink, right? And also part of the white box kind of stage is, of course, the blockout, but it's also the first pass on the markup, placement of the AI, usables, any transit. So any location should be fully playable, even though it's rough and not polished, but it should be fully playable in white box. And that is a requirement before we actually reach something we call the white box sign-off, right? After the white box sign-off, we go into gray box, and that is where the environment artists take over and they look at what we have done. They start making it very pretty. They might come to us and say like, listen, this thing you built here, it is causing us a lot of problems. Could we please do something else there? We go like, yeah or no, depending if it's like super crucial, right? Usually we reach compromises because that's the solution to any type of diplomatic conflict. And then they
can also be the other way around, right? So
yeah,
if they take,
of course.
Yeah, if they take over and like build something and they maybe get like a bit overboard with that, or like maybe it doesn't turn out that well, and then like we just like toss feedback back and forth, and then it's like, hey, it's like how it currently looks. It doesn't work very well for navigation or like for AI. Maybe we can tweak something here and there. So more minor tweaks, like not major stuff.
Yep.
So at the moment, I've been looking at like basically from the inside here, we would be able to see that gigantic cave that opens in the back. It's like the line of sight, right? And so I started to kind of like have a rough layout. I want to have a room at the end of this and some kind of like, whole like walkway on top of the cave over here. That ends up into some location, some kind of room at the end. But then I realized, hold on, because if we're inside of here, that means that it's kind of like loading already everything. So I started to grab this big rock here and try to use it as like a big pillar to kind of block the view from the inside, so that usually it would be like. The trick we would use is maybe like a donut type of room where you have a pillar in the middle and you have to go around, and that makes sure that what's behind you is not being shown anymore. But I mean, for this showcase, I think this is fine.
Right.
So I'll do it.
You're dealing with two. To me, it looks like you're dealing with two major considerations right now. One, you're trying to build a reveal for the player so that when they see it, they see a hint, a sense of, oh, there's a cave down there, and then they walk out. As they walk out, you tighten their field of view so that then it can explode into this, grand, like, oh, and have a moment there for the player. But you also have to have performance considerations, and when is this stuff going to stream in? When is this stuff, when is, this stuff all going to move into memory and stuff, and you don't want to have to load the entire, cave when they're still so far away. Yeah,
I mean, most of the stuff is kind of already loaded, so it's more about the culling, I would say. But gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of locations that we have in the game, you will notice that when you move into them, there's a dog leg or something that just brings you around the corner. Because let's say that you have a long chain of rooms, all the doors are lining up, and like 20 players just each stand in one doorway and create this like 2-kilometer tunnel where you can see down. It's gonna bring everyone's performance down to even lower levels, right? So that would be an unfortunate thing.
Yeah, well, so it would also be boring. So it can also create for more interesting ideas and like to
exactly.
think.
I mean, if you look at a combat space, for example, it's a straight corridor that just goes on forever. That's not really interesting. You want to have some bends, you want to have some nooks and crannies, to take cover behind, and create this interesting, you line up there, you peek around the corner, and then you move forward. It's not just straight. Yeah, no one likes to explore just a straight tunnel, right?
Also, for example, like this big cave I got here, right? This is really just to showcase to the artists, right? It would actually not be something we would put in the game, but it's to get the point, like, oh, I need a big reveal here. Like, to me, it doesn't really matter what that big reveal would be at this stage, but it's just to get it's easy to communicate, like, oh, that's a big thing and I need to see when I come here. It needs to be something huge. And yeah,
I think they're always happy if you start scaling, take the art and scale it like how we need it. But it's really just like, as Antoine said, it's just for us to like give the impression on how the space feels, and also show the artists like, hey, we imagine like this is like the big cave, right? And so, like as we also had in the prisons, like I just took a bunch of the art walls and just tried to build the cave and like the size how I imagine it, and then the artist goes in later on and actually like he makes it like look proper and scale properly and everything like that. For me, it's just like to give the space the right feeling for me to work with, and like for play testing, and then it's like they can come in and then they make it pretty.
Now, there's a question in chat that's interesting. When does we've seen a lot of concept art for various locations. We were just showing concept art for the various hospitals in ISC yesterday. When does concepting for locations happen? Does it happen after you've completed a white box so that the artists know what general shape and form that you're working with, or does the concept happen before this?
It depends. You can have like mood concepts that usually comes before, that describes a mood. For example, let's do like a flagship landing zone. It could be like Lorville, and they put down like dusty plaza, big high walls. It just gives you a sensation of what the impression and the feeling of the location should be. And then usually these mood concepts is something that the level designer takes, and it starts to kind of put together streets or whatever it might be that kind of feels like it, right? Mm-hmm. And when you have like a layout that feels all right, you have the street, you have this whatever side alleyways, whatever it might be, then that can be sent back to concepts and they do an overpaint of that. Basically, they paint over what Antoine is doing here, for example. They would choose like a nice angle of this, and they would just take an image and they would start painting it over with their amazing skills and basically dressing it with a paintbrush rather than having an environment artist go in and dress it, right? And then we get an idea of what it would actually look like. And these overpaints then also helps the environment artist later on to know how they will dress the location and also identify what kind of pieces they would need to build, right? But that is one of the tricky things about being a level designer as well, is that it looks easy sometimes, but the ability to create spaces and shapes that just feel good, that feels like they belong together and it's a natural kind of real environment, it is quite tricky. Anyone can download any kind of editor at the moment and open it and try to put a room together, and I bet you on your first attempt is going to be interesting.
I don't know. My first Quake 3 map was excellent. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, not everyone is a legend like yourself. So
another question from the chat: where did you get started with this? Did you start with like building Legos? Was it Legos, and then you're like, hey, I like building rooms and halls and connectors, or was there a mod tool for a certain game? How do you get into level design?
I can start.
Sure.
Because I guess everybody has a different background, right, on that. Yeah, for me, I think it's funny to say, but I think Minecraft helped really to get the sense of space and scale and just like what makes sense, what feels cool to build and so on. But then, yeah, I jumped into like editors to try to build games out of these editors and also other game engine before getting into the industry. Just building games and so on, and I focus on level design, like building worlds and just thinking about the spatial aspect of things is something that I like. So yeah, that's for me.
On my end, when I was young, I played a bit. Always like to play around with level editors like Warcraft 3, for example. But that was just more on the side. But when I was playing games like the Gothic or the Risen series, this is when it actually like started in getting me like interested in. I really want to do this for a living because for level design you actually like you see what you're building in the editor in the game rather than in game design where you do more like theoretical stuff and do a lot of like write-ups and things like that. So it was always more appealing to me to build something in the editor, and I have like the freedom and try to abuse some of the assets or play around and just like create a location and also a bit of scripting and all that stuff.
Clench
So-
Beastwood says, I've played Minecraft. I'm a level designer. I've played
Exactly.
baseball. I'm not a baseball player.
Nah, but then you have to take it, to the next level too.
That's true.
Doing it professionally is just there's a lot of rule set and so on that goes on, right?
Yeah, we're just talking
But
about where you
it
got the
definitely
start.
helped on developing. Sorry.
Where'd you get your start, Manuel? What was the thing that made you want to do this?
Well, it's just just all the logic of the spatial aspect of it made it very appealing. And when I realized that I could do that, as a job, learning all these rule sets, and that's when I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing it. At the moment here, I think I kind of like have a layout that I like. Just this room, then it's just I can get from here. There's like this little section that tells me, hey, storytelling. We're gonna get into the rocky area, and then there's it's not just a straight line, just a small path that goes on the side, goes down a little bit, making it a bit interesting. Then it gets to this room. I left like an area over here with a door to kind of like explain that maybe it just expand on this side, and that is maybe the way that you connect back to the cave system. That could just be inside of the big open area of the cave, and then you take like the side path, and then you join like the bottom, or I don't know. Yeah. So what I'm gonna look at next is probably some purpose, like some placing down, populate a little bit of the space, placing down a bit of covers, and then try maybe with some AI and see what comes up.
Let's get God mode.
Oh yeah.
To quickly get back to your question, Jared. So after I knew what I want to do, I actually looked around how can you get into the industry or into the job. And in Germany, they actually have schools for that. At the time, it was just I think 2. So I just applied there, and I took a course in game design, level design. And then once I was done, I looked for jobs in the industry, and I started working for 3D browser game and did some fantasy types, top-down level design. In between, I also did a bit of a few years of QA, which was also quite interesting to see how all the other departments and how testing and everything works.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's no better way to learn game development than working in QA.
Yeah, exactly. It's quite a different point of view from that. And yeah, and at some point I showed up at Andreas' door.
And I blessed him.
Yeah.
Yes, he said instantly hired.
There was,
Yes.
was it last week or the week before or something? There was a big thing on social media about whether QA were game developers, and I'm like, if you look at the sheer number of game developers that start their career in QA, you'd have no question about whether QA were developers or not.
I mean, my opinion is QA is like one of the most important departments in a company. You don't want to release a game that hasn't gone through QA. Trust me. I mean, you're going to be for a terrible ride.
Yeah. No.
Just imagine the most buggy game that you ever played in your entire life. That still went through QA. You know, imagine how bad it would be otherwise. Right?
It also gives you like a different perspective on like testing your own stuff and like thinking of situations or ways others might not. And I think it quite helps like having this experience.
No, it's absolutely impossible to overstate how important QA is to the game development process. In
I
fact,
just want to point out, Antoine, I see you're working off the grid. What is the reason for that?
Yeah, I am. Sorry, Andreas.
what are you doing, Antoine?
I
We
don't
talked
know.
about this.
Yeah.
Ah,
So yeah, working on grid is very important, guys. As you can see, because this defines the metric of the game. Yeah, no, but you see, all my walls are on grid, Andreas.
Mm,
save this level afterwards and we do a proper review.
next
Ah.
year's review, he's gonna bring up this episode.
You guys had it lucky getting into industry, though. I mean, with your schools and stuff, that's pretty fancy.
How did you end up, Andreas?
I mean, my teenage years were before even the internet, right? So, I mean, we didn't even we had computers. I mean, I started absolutely with, I remember when I was like 7, I used to love drawing top-down road networks. No idea why. I mean, like many A4 pages, they're all lining up and just creating huge cities top-down. GTA 1 and 2 style, right? But this was like, this is back in probably like 91, 89, 88, that period. And then, of course, it came into Legos, which is the only toy I had when I grew up. I had nothing but Legos, only Lego. It's the supreme toy. The best of the toys.
Yeah, I took a guess earlier. I'm like, there has to be some Lego involved here somewhere.
Oh yeah. And then of course the classic, like going into D&D or our Swedish version of D&D, Drakar and Demoner, which is quite old. And then being the dungeon master of that was also fun. I always love creating my own content, right? So.
Do you ever still start with a piece of paper and a pencil when you're doing these?
Yeah, I do sometimes. I'm not sure about these youngsters, but
yeah, I actually do that as well. I try to think about like how I want to build a place and some layouts, and I just do some rough sketches on paper, and then I try to convert them into editor and see if that actually like works. So I don't know. How's it for you, Antoine?
I like to get my ideas done right away, like in 3D, because I'm thinking about space. Sometimes I cannot convert it to paper. It's a bit weird one, but it depends. So sometimes like I need a sketch before to know what I will be building. But yeah, it really depends on what the subject is, because a concept art can inspire you sometimes more than your own drawing. So
yeah, that's true.
That box is 3.183 meters high. You're still. This is terrible. What kind of cover height is that?
Let's talk about how important metrics are.
Terrible.
Let's talk about metrics.
So metrics is key, right? What Antoine is showing here is it's not a great methodology of level design when you work off the grid, right? Like.
So what I'm trying to achieve here is to repro this type of thing, right? This type of kitchen, but within here. So in the first place, if I would actually build a whole kitchen on grid, it would take me forever because I'm not a 3D artist. So I'd rather have like these quick things in there. And the only metric that I would care about at this point is the 1.25, which is the cover height for AI and so on. And so at this stage, if maybe I want that this wall is at least higher than 125. So if we combine 136 plus 0.9 something, then we get
please do the math of that.
Plus.
Combine those for us, please.
But then I would then go back in and iterate again and make like a proper as Andreas mentioned, we go dirty first to get the point.
You just don't have to show people how dirty it actually is, But
and we would clean that up later on.
I mean, there's a few metrics that is quite key here, right? As Antoine mentioned, it's the 1.25, which is the cover height, right? And that is the crouch cover. When you're crouching, that is the height that you are completely covered and you won't get your head blown off, right?
Yeah,
the second the second metric that is important is the navigation space, right? So yeah, we can do this first. Yeah, this is the markup stuff that we're doing when we're marking up the levels. Every place that you have covers and stuff, this is someone who's manually going in and placing an entity that's connects to the nav mesh and kind of generates the cover for that section, right? So
These are the things that tell the AI that there's a place.
exactly. I mean,
To cover.
Precisely.
Yeah.
I was going to show, like, you see how now it turns red if it's under 125, and that's why, like, I have to follow that over here. Wait, actually I can turn all of them. There you go. And that one is good enough. That there's a room where it even shows me, like, okay, that's like complete
full cover.
Cover. This one is like just a cover, and this one is not accepted or half cover. Yep.
Yeah, the second metrics that is quite important in this stage is the navigation, right? So one AI needs 1.25 meters to navigate through a path without major issues. So if you make a path that is 1.25 wide, then one AI can cross it, right? Ideally, we try to make all our paths 2.5, which is double that, which means two AI can cross each other without, the very polite, excuse me, sir. Yep, I'm sorry. That's you first, that kind of thing. It can be tricky sometimes, especially when you start putting props like boxes, for example, in front of doorways like we have here, that we have to go in and kind of check that the space is sufficient for AI to actually be able to navigate. So that is a second metric that is quite important. Cover and navigation. And this is a few of the things that Anton was placing was, as we said, it's like this cover entities, and that's part of the markup phase. There's a lot of the other types of markup that we do. Like I said before, like the room system that actually adds a breathable atmosphere to the room.
I can show another one here, like to be able to vault or to go on top of a ledge. Also something that we're doing to kind of control, make sure that, if you're not able to, if you shouldn't jump there, then we're making sure you cannot, but we only allow it in some areas.
Yeah, I think we can even determine if it's like should be usable from both sides, right, or only from one side. So in theory, you could now stand like on a lower platform and then jump, and then here the character would pull up and pull himself over the ledge, or the other way around. You could jump down, but you could also restrict it to like be only one way.
So for example, here you see a good example of like level design, right? Where let's imagine this is a combat area. You have this little section where Antoine was just in, right? You have boxes that is kind of facing towards the door. You have people who can be on the other side. You have this little ledge on the left side if you go over that back into the corner over there. This is almost like a little survey platform that leads down to the door, where you can overlook the situation. You can have one person kind of standing here providing cover while the other person goes in and clears the room, for example. There's a lot of little things like this that when we build stuff, we kind of do it on the fly almost because we've done it so many times. But it's all about creating a different in elevation, which is always very interesting, without creating needlessly complicated paths. And on top of that, combining that with nice fire angles and cover positions. So no matter if you're an attacker or defender, you would ideally have some advantage in certain parts of the map, right? Now you're going a bit crazy, Antoine, really.
I'm doing a 4-burner stove.
Yeah.
Just then that's important for the others.
This is not part of level design. Just telling you right now. He's just showing that he knows how to do a little bit of art.
Oh, but then people understand what it is now.
I mean, with this, we can just slap on a material, right, and ship it.
Yeah.
So it's.
I mean,
new patch tomorrow.
I know an industrial kitchen was your visual reference, but I gotta think that with this situation here, this is more likely a drug lab or something, being out here at the end of a.
It could be a geology lab, and they need heaters and burners as well to study samples of materials and whatever it might be.
Cook the rocks.
Cook the rock, yes.
I don't know anything about geology.
It's fascinating.
I think that's AI.
Another thing worth mentioning as well, like what Antoine is building there, this entire section from here onwards, that would be a separate module, right? That would be built as an independent thing, and it can be attached to any of the connectors of the hub. So
Exactly, this is what Antoine showed in the beginning when he pulled out the hub, and you saw like the 4 different modules poking out. That this would be like one of those sections, and then you could like, in theory, move it like on each of the connectors, like on the north, west, or east side, for example, and like ideally with the modular content, stuff should work in like any way it's connected and attached.
Where did your NPC run to? Oh, there he is.
oh, nice.
Yeah, I think they went all like inside and used that cover inside.
Yeah, he lured you in.
Go.
Just want to point out there's a small gap between one of the boxes on the higher platform.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's what happened when you do sloppy level design.
Yeah, you can also do that, right? And yeah, and then do something with them. Maybe cook them in your drug lab. I don't know.
Maybe.
Oh.
I mean, it's the future, you know.
Freeze.
Maybe expand our cuisine to include other species.
That's just a small freeze from my side. There we go, we're back. Yeah, so cover works. The AI is moving around and so on, so it's quite nice. And they are taking cover, so that works well. Maybe I need to check how far the navigation is going. So looks fine. It's not going here, so maybe the AI is not using these ones. And try to rectify that.
Now, you didn't do the navigation markup. How is that just suddenly there?
Because we already had one with this one, so I kind of like cheated here. But I will actually do one so you guys can see.
Yeah, navigation is it's a volume that we put down, and in this case it's just a giant volume, and then the system generates everything inside the volumes, checks all the surfaces, and generates a valid navmesh.
Nice.
Ideally, of course, each room would have a more detailed version, like what he's doing now. But for testing, it's just fine to put down a giant box. And
I kind of feel like I want a ladder so that you can climb on top. Now that I've seen, now that I saw the nav mesh on top of the kitchen, I kind of want a ladder to get up there.
You want a ladder on top here?
Yeah.
I'm sure Antoine can build a little balcony on top there with the ladder up, can't you, Antoine, for Jared?
Yeah, I can do that.
There was a question in the chat earlier. When you were putting the bookshelves in there, you actually like built the bookshelf. You know, wall, top, shelf. For as common as bookshelves are, is there not just a white box bookshelf that you can just go plop there?
That kind of goes into the thing where for us, we could just put a box. It's kind of up to us to communicate that to the artists as like, hey, that would be a storage area. Usually what I would do as well is to have each of these labeled, like kind of like what I did with these boxes here, with like maybe color coding, and then just explain that. Or I would have a drawing of a layout that we do in Visio or so on, where I would especially like, specify that, that's these are storage area. Now, when the concept art comes in, then they would put that in, or even just the artist, they would swap out. But I thought that for the visual aspect of it, we could just build a shelf.
Right.
I mean, even with this, right? With we use something called the designer solid tool, right?
Yeah.
We're quite proficient with it. So sometimes it takes longer for us to open a library, find a bookshelf,
right,
and put it into level. Then it's just like drag a box, drag 3 more boxes, extrude, you know, it's job's done, right? I mean, it's it's just the way it is.
No, I hear you. I get you. Yeah, so that it looks like a bookshelf at this moment because it's just a couple things, but it could be a cupboard, it could be a it could be a cabinet, it can be a storage locker.
Basically, when we put down stuff in a location, it does like what Antoine did next to the stairs there. You put something that looks like a pipe. In the end, that might turn into a support column. The only thing we have indicated is that we want to have something there that is of full height of this size. Most likely it will be some kind of full cover. And then when the artists put it together, they can really use their creativity to put whatever they would like to have in it, right? If there is something specific that we want, that we really want to have this type of art piece there, let's say we really do want to have a pipe there because we want to, when there's combat, that someone shoots it and it bursts and gas comes out, then we will maybe put a color on it and say like this, and this has to be a pipe, right? And then
Gotcha.
that's a pipe.
I'm building nonsense.
You're
But-
building Jared's balcony.
Exactly.
His little reclining chair. And it's nice
It's just what I said nonsense because it, like, in reality, this doesn't make sense, right? It's just for the sake of the show, right? I just want to precise it so that
You have an
people
entire
don't think I'm
underground
crazy.
facility with a kitchen outside in the cave. Don't talk to me about what makes sense.
Yeah. Precisely.
Vertical traversal is great.
Oh yeah, but we can even expand more, right? We could have like some venting system that goes back in here or something.
I mean, it could be that, for example, that door, let's say this door that you have leading on the other way, maybe that's the barracks, and this is actually their kind of common area. They just have a very nice cave view with lots of cave bugs flying into their soups.
I get you. Like this is like a build out of the underground facility that hasn't quite been completely constructed yet.
For example, maybe they're waiting for a few more modular pieces to kind of put together and put into the cave, right?
I do like the adherence of the safety railings. It's like this underground facility that's got this precarious kitchen outside on this random platform. They're like, nope, safety first.
Yeah. Important.
All the rails.
As we said, it doesn't have to be like a food kitchen, right? There's many types of kitchens, or not even kitchens, places with storage and some kind of heat element, right?
Yeah, a lab of some kind.
There you go.
See? Oh, Jared created an interesting vertical combat space. Well done, Jared.
Hey,
Nice.
I've played a video game or two.
I have a free slot on my level design team if you want to join, just saying.
Never mind. I was going to say something that I keep a number of options open. Who knows when my
That's
last
good.
day ends up here?
Never put all your hand grenades in the same basket, right?
I can start on a bit on markup as well, where basically we add like room system so that you can breathe without your helmet.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. I mean, show a bit markup so people know the less exciting creative bits of level design, right?
Although after the 404, I don't think John Crew will ever let me on the vehicle team.
They're overrated anyway.
Yeah, so with the room system now, it's since we already have an existing one that comes from the hub, and I think Antoine can maybe turn on a debug where we can actually see then how it connects. So for now, he's placing an area box down here. Can also be a shape, whatever we need. It depends on like how complex the room is, and then we define it by the size up until the walls. And then we just connect an entity to it and tell it like, you are a room system, you have like oxygen. And we try to separate it in a logical way on how the rooms are broken up.
Mm-hmm.
So for this room, for example, it would go up until the door. And then in the door would sit another connector to the next room system for the platform. And we would put in a connector in between, so actually the air can like circulate between, like we can define it by the size of the room, or doors, for example, come automatically with a room connector in the proper size, and it will actually then tell the game like how the oxygen will actually like circulate and flow. Should we ever get like according gameplay related things?
Decompression.
Yes.
I mean, it is important, just what Manuel said as well, because the size of the volume actually determines the amount of air, and it is a correct amount of air, right? That's why the markup is important. Like we make a small room, it will only have, if you make a 4 cubic meter size room, that room will only have 4 cubic meter of air. So that is what you have, So that's why all this is important. But also, if you have a very large room on one side, a very large room on the other side, and a very tiny door in between them, the portal in between the two will determine the rate of gas transfer between the two rooms as well. So if one room is a vacuum, the other one has full of oxygen, you open the door, it's not just going to instantly equalize. It's going to leak over at the rate that is transferred through the portal, right? So
Indeed, and whenever one of the players noticed that areas without air exits, could have been sometimes appeared in the Area 18 hubs, for example, then there was a broken connector and all the air leaked out into the void and left the room without air. So yeah, that's things that can happen sometimes. Connector just gets offset a bit, or like something was accidentally deleted, or something just broke, and then we need to go in and check like is the markup, like the box, still right? Does it have the right size? Does the connector still sit? Yep, and we have like lots of debug options to debug that and see that.
yeah, in this case, for example, the room here has a room, and the one he was just in also has a room. The other bit that is on the outside between the two is technically almost an exterior, right? So it wouldn't really have a markup unless it's inside a cave. We usually do a bit, for example, a cave system does have a room system markup, but it has a portal at the entrance that transfer the gases in and out, right? So it was similar here. So ideally, because they don't have airlocks in this place, one would assume that there's a somewhat breathable atmosphere in this cave.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes, I'll just put one over there, and then leave it to the planet space over here, so that when you
quickly
come in.
Set up a transit elevator. No.
But yeah, sure. No, that's takes a bit more time.
I know.
But yeah, so we've got a marked up area with some AI, some cover, added to a UGF.
Yep. Very rough. Needs a couple of more iterations, but good job, Antoine.
Yeah, there's some stuff that
Yeah.
are not perfect, but
Well, it's important to remember that in these hour-long game dev SCLs, I don't think there's a single aspect of Star Citizen that can be made in an hour. So everybody that comes on to do this is facing a virtually impossible task. So
Well, the good thing is that he didn't create any spaces where it can actually fall off. So his security rating is A.
what about that? That's like you can't crawl into that hole right there. You can't go prone.
I'm sure you can go prone and just like squeeze yourself in like a worm, but
yeah.
you can plug that under between the stairs on the left side.
Show me what happens. Go prone. There you
Oh.
go. Oh.
Maybe.
There you go.
Need to plug that hole, man. You just went to secret level B here.
Whee! But yeah, as Andreas mentioned, like, we can see now, if I take the hub again, that would be maybe a small section, and we basically just created one of these again, kind of like what we have here, right? This would be like an entire section that we can swap out. So I could just take that whole section and put it somewhere else where there is like the same connector size.
You could even shuffle them around and like have it like ordered in a different spots.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at the moment as well, we have very limited content with our UGFs. So the plan in the future, of course, is to revisit and really quite expand them and turn them into their proper thing. They're a bit lackluster at the moment. They have a few years on them. They need a bit of polish, a bit of makeup, and they need some parts actually need to be completely redone. So there will be one of the components that we'll be looking at in the future at some point will be a complete rework of the UGFs and really put them out with like a proper amount of content, not just a hub and 3 rooms, right? Because that's underwhelming.
The UGFs did get a new edition in 3.13 though. Nobody's discovered them yet.
Dum dum dum.
So I mean the patch just went out yesterday. So, but there is something new to discover in. I think it's the medium ones. Might be the large ones. There's about 9 of them. There's about 9 of them that have something fun to discover.
Mhm.
And Andreas is like, I have no idea what he's talking about.
I have no idea what he's talking
Nope.
about, to be honest.
It's
Nope.
it's
I'm just trying to not show my ignorance.
they're in there. No, I'm not saying what they are because I want
It's
people to
like
discover.
small collectibles of yourself. A fluffy Jared laying around.
It's not actually far from the truth.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
All right. So yeah. So we've got just a couple minutes. What do we? How do you want to wrap this up? Is there something you can do in like 3 minutes? What are you doing now? You're going crazy with the doors?
Yeah, I thought about expanding this into a connector about the same size over there we have over there, and then I realized that basically we have the shaft over here. So, in
It's a
this
big
case,
shaft.
then yeah, the elevator shaft, which is a problem. So in this case, for example, if I make it too big, we would have like bounding boxes checks that would ensure that nothing would collide on one into the other, stuff like that. So maybe that new section that I have here could work over here, but maybe it wouldn't work where I'm building it right now.
Yeah, right. That's why I mentioned that sometimes it helps if you just like have a longer corridor that like brings out the whole space a bit further and then allows for like more generation options. Because otherwise, the procedural tool would tell you like, hey, there's like it would collide, so it wouldn't generate, and then it tries for like different combinations or different slots where it could connect this new piece to. And yeah,
I mean, one of the kind of design philosophies that I've been pushed for as well is that we really want to get away from this room corridor kind of approach to building. That's not really what the world looks like. It's a series of rooms, or it might be it's a bit more structured than that, so you would never get that. But at some points in the game, you might use corridors to what this guy's been saying, like to kind of push some content a bit further away, because otherwise we will run into bounding box issues with all the items that lies around it, and things will just never be able to generate, right? So, yeah.
exactly.
But
But
with
also
the
when
procedural tool as well, we have the ability to procedurally construct corridors. So the game, when generating, can build corridors by itself. Sorry, Manuel, please go on.
No, it's fine. What I wanted to say is like not necessarily dependent on the procedural stuff, but what Antoine was like building before, like here's like we sometimes already plan for like future spaces where things could connect on later on, but like for the initial release, it would just like be cut off, but there would be a door, a locked door, and you couldn't go any further. But we already tried to like plan ahead a bit, and it's like how we can expand the space in the future, and like, or we already know like from the level design documents like what we want to build in like the tier 1, tier 2 stuff, and we already plan out for these spaces, and just like okay, we know. Let's say area 18, the hospital, like we know already like where it would go and like place a facade there and something like that. So we already planned for the space and know and leave that for the future.
Yep.
Cool. Well, thank you, Antoine. I think we have a better sense now of what level design does, how they
Please
work.
move that box down.
Frozen.
Oh,
Editor.
we can't end the show until I give Andreas this. He's got to.
Yeah, perfect.
It's better that intersect. You're not violating the laws of reality.
The law.
And something.
All right, you can go ahead and stop the share.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everybody. This has been Star Citizen Live Game Dev FPS Level Design. I've been your host, Jared Huckabee, and joining us on the show this week has been Antoine. I'm not going to try to say your last name. You want to do it?
Foggy.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't try. Antoine, Andreas, and Manuel. Thank you for joining us. We'll be next week we have an ISC and another episode of Calling All Devs. So I'll see you live again in about 2 weeks. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care. No raid this week. It's been a long week. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
You gonna fix that box now?
Sorry.
This being a
Fix the
performance review
box,
tomorrow.
man.
This is unacceptable.
I mean,